The Who Actually Knows podcast. This is for all things 20s, hosted by a 20-something herself.
Welcome back, you guys. Happy Who Actually Knows podcast day. This is episode 53, and honestly, it feels like my very first episode. And I'm going to be honest, I took a month break during the beginning of a podcast. This is normally when I sit here and I give you my weekly recap. What have I been doing for the week? What has Emma been up to? And I guess I could give you like a month recap. 2 months? I think it's been 2 months. My last podcast episode was early May, and it is the 4th of July next week, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I didn't think I'd ever take this long of a break because the podcast literally makes me so happy. But I think I needed it. Actually, I know I needed it. And that is exactly what this podcast is going to be about. It's about allowing yourself to take the break. Take the break and know that it is okay. And I'm going to honestly just get right into it. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode because I haven't done this in a little bit. So I guess like the last 2 months, to catch you guys up, I had my birthday episode, which was awesome, around my 1 year of podcasting. And then I had a guest episode. All of those were great and amazing. During that time that I was continuing on with podcasting, like around April, I started a new job. You guys all heard about it because I created the quarter life crisis episode. And I'm totally going to be so frank. I leaned into that bit. No one has ever talked about that. How like you can get a bit or like a funny saying going and then you keep saying it. Actually, maybe it is because I guess that's manifesting. But then you lean into the bit too hard. And the quarter life crisis, it crisised. I don't even know if that's a word. But it felt like a crisis. Who knows, maybe I'm still going through it, but I feel like I have at least my feet on the ground a little bit more with it. But yeah, because I started a new job. It is in marketing. I used to work in finance and I'm loving the creativity. It is so much fun and I have my foot in the door and this is just an amazing industry and I'm very fortunate for it. But like as you're juggling from leaving a corporate job and working for a startup, everything you thought you knew, not everything, the majority feels like out the window only because the structure is different. And it's go, go, go and learn, which is exactly the type of role that I wanted being so young. But there's a learning curve. And throw in some personal development journeys going on in the middle of that. And then turning 25 and having new people in my life. And just all of a sudden it felt like life decided to like speed. Like someone put a rock on the gas pedal and come at me full force. All great things, like so fortunate, but I just honestly felt like I couldn't sit down and give the podcast the time of day that you all deserve. And it didn't feel authentic and I needed to take a break from it. So when I went home, I have gone to 3 weddings in the last 2 months. I had back-to-back wedding weekends and then a bachelorette, and I was home and I was just stressed. Like my mom was like, something's not right. Like you need to just focus on yourself. Like don't let anything stress you out. And I actually left all my podcast equipment at home. And it was nothing, like I brought the podcast equipment thinking I was going to do some podcasts, and never in a million years would someone have came up to me and like, I think you should take a break from podcasting, because I was like, this is the most me thing in my life right now. It feels the most authentic. And the one thing that was said to me was, if this is the most thing that's authentic to you, don't make it unauthentic. Like keep that true to you. And sometimes that means taking a break. And so in May, when I was home, I left all my podcast equipment at home because I was coming back for another wedding in June. And also about that time, I was like, you know what? If anyone follows me on Instagram, I love my Instagram story. I love it. Love it. I don't really post it often, but I noticed that I was spending a lot of time on my personal Instagram. So I run a brand social media. So I'm always like on social media, but I decided to like, okay, if I'm going to leave my podcast things, like also let's just like take a break from trying to like post daily things on my own TikTok or even my Instagram. And so literally all I did was focus on what I had to do for work, social media wise. And I was like, I'm just going to take a break and take a breather. And I did. And it felt really good, actually. So the whole month of May was just really getting my feet on the ground. And like, I needed it. And I don't even think I knew that I was doing this, but like I was overwhelming myself trying to balance so many hats and so many new things. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest, I'm human. Like all that stuff, all of those changes were really, really hard. And I needed to take the break. So I did. So we're in June. I go home. I bring the podcast equipment back home with me. And honestly, like I came home, I don't know, like probably like 2 weeks ago. And I wanted to pump out some podcasts. And I just like still like wasn't really feeling like inspired or motivated, unfortunately. And I was just like, you know what? It's not the time then to get back on and start podcasting. Like I can take a break after having that month away from things. Like actually some people did ask like, oh, you're not like posting your TikToks or you're not posting your podcast. Like what's going on? And the fact that people actually reached out and asked like meant the world to me. And I was like, you know what? Like I cannot wait to start this up again because I miss it. But I just needed that like mental clarity break. And I don't think, again, like people don't talk about that enough because I feel like especially in your young 20s, it's like go, try as many things as you can. Like obviously everyone has something they're going through, but it's like, it's almost like you don't want to slow down because you're like, well, they can balance all of these things, or that person can do this and this person can do that and they're ahead of me. So like I need to just keep going or I'm going to fall behind. And it's just wanting the next thing and the next thing. What's next? What's next? And it's the way that we're wired socially. Like the brain is wired to want and not to slow down and appreciate. And I felt that. I wanted this thing in my life and I wanted the new job and I wanted the social life and I wanted this for my TikTok or this for the podcast. And I was just wanting. And literally, if I look back to the 2 months, like it went by so fast because I was just always looking on to the next thing. And I stopped and I was like, I don't want this podcast to be, well, what's the next thing? I want to sit and enjoy it because what I noticed, especially in these last 2 weeks when I started becoming more inspired and more motivated, was that it gives me a purpose and it lets me have my creative outlet. And without that, honestly, I didn't really know how to fill some of the time. And like a lot of the time that like I might not have been focusing on the podcast, I instead like decided to do like a little bit of more personal inner work, connecting with the people that like maybe I've fallen off with, just like reflecting on a lot. And I just, because of that, and I will talk about it eventually, like went through a huge therapy, I'm still going through a huge therapy journey, but by like taking the time and really diving in, I was like, I can't wait to get back and be more authentic and more true on this podcast. Because at the end of the day, like I'm just someone in my 20s going through all of this, and I want to be able to talk about the good things and the bad things and things that are relatable. Like I would call my mom sometimes and I was like, oh, I just like, wish I could talk about this on the podcast. Or I would just talk and I was like, oh my God, I just feel like more human, like going through all of these things. Like, and she's like, I mean, going through hard things gives you character and it makes you more relatable. And honestly, like I just kept thinking about that and I was like, I just can't wait to be able to like talk about different things on the podcast now that I took my break. So like enough about me just going on about taking a break. I will say, if you are thinking like what's next, like comparing yourself to what other people are doing, and you feel like you might be going full speed and might be getting a little burnout, it is okay to take that break.
I'm so, so thankful that I did, because I came back more refreshed. I came back ready to get back on my creative outlet, ready to record the podcast. Like, I have more energy, more spark to me. Like, I'm coming up with new ideas and I'm writing them down whenever I can. And I'm not just like so afraid of like being overwhelmed, and I'm taking it on head on, but because I let myself slow down. And like, no matter what it is, maybe you need to take a break from going out, working out. Maybe you need to take a break from a friend who's draining you, a family member. Like, all of these things are just setting boundaries with yourself, with other people. But know that no matter what you're setting, all of these are for you and they're going to be better. And it can literally be taking a break from reading. The amount of times I've talked to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I've just been like overwhelmed with reading. Like, then why are you then don't read. I was reading 2 books a week in the beginning of the year, everyone. I now don't read. I actually have an adult coloring book and I color. But it's so much more relaxing and I get what I want out of it. So take the break, slow down, smell the roses, pick it up if you want or don't. But just take the break and know that it is okay. And you know what, you guys, I'm going to keep it short and sweet today. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for listening. I'm fucking back.